There are a few scholars who interpret Nagarjuna as the supreme logician or dialectician, as if truth could be adduced logically or by a dialectical effort. To be sure, the Karika exhibits traits of logical inferences from time to time, but this is not true in all instances. If there are semblances of a consistent use of logic or a form of dialectic, these at best only depict the play or function of reason, and not in terms of, quote, awakening reason to a wondrous realm of existence. It is true that ordinary man is sorely unaware of the ground for his own thinking process, a ground which might be termed the psychophysical continuum throughout the whole being. Clarity, purity, unclouded thinking are, after all, aspects of the rational play, but such a play is only one of the attributes of the sense world. That is to say, the mind, or citta, and its function are only considered parts of the function of the sensible realm in Buddhism, and never as separate or transcendental aspects of being. More specifically, along with the five sense organs, the mind is considered to be another sense organ. This is one of the ways in which Buddhism treats the continuum of being and avoids the simple dichotomy of mind-body or subject-object relationship. This fact is so easily overlooked in later developments, but it is so basic to all Buddhist thought, early or later, that no interpreter could ill afford to neglect this unity of being from its genetic beginnings. We might conclude here by saying that Nagarjuna is not a logician or a dialectician of the Western brand, and that the Buddhist truth, if forthcoming at all, is not the result of logic or dialectics. Truth does not lend itself to mere rational accounting, however subtle or refined that may be. It is rather the result of prajna, the so-called, quote, eye of wisdom, the instrument which cuts open and at once reveals reality for what it is. And yet, prajna, in this sense, is only a tool, which presents itself only at the opportune moment after rigorous training, inclusive of total being, but the potential of its realization, and thereby its cutting power, lies nascent in every living being. Nagarjuna, however, does not treat this special doctrine of prajna in the Karika in any systematic manner. This is left to the Prajnaparamita Sutras, which were abundantly and extant during his time, since he was an heir to their teaching, and one of which he is alleged to have commented on. If Nagarjuna is not to be labeled as an absolute monist, a radical pluralist, a nihilist, a negativist, a relativist, a logician, and finally a dialectician, what then can be said of him and his philosophy? It would seem that there is but one definite and practical approach to guide us. It is that Nagarjuna's thoughts, however elusive they seem to be, must be made coincident with the most original and fundamental teaching of the historical Buddha, that is, the doctrine of the middle path. As indeed he himself asserts several times in the Karika that he is only following the Buddha's words. It is a doctrine accepted by all, and at once the quest of all. It is the supreme ontological principle in Buddhism. The middle path, as initially discoursed in the Buddhist Foundation Sutra, indicates that it is realized by the avoidance of the two extremes. What extremes? The extremes of the realism of activities relative to luxury and asceticism. One side engenders the quest for affluent matters and things which are of the nature of permanency and eternality, while the other the quest for total self-abnegation, self-effacement, and of the nature of impermanence, nihilism, and annihilation. In both instances there arise the root evil forces of objectifying or entifying either the elements related to wealth or riches on the one hand, or elements related to non-entity, nihility, or negativity on the other. And furthermore, there is the grasping, clinging to the objectified content or elements within the ever-flowing existence. Thus, in each instance, there exists the extreme of being, quote, caught up in the objectified elements within the perspective or viewpoint that one consciously or unconsciously maintains. That is, the elements are abstracted, taken out of context, and staticized into lifeless images and thereupon viewed as real, all the time unmindful of the basic stream of life. Stated in another metaphorical way, the clinging on to objectified elements in the ontological flow is analogous to the messy or sticky affair of a fly caught in an ointment. And this affair seems to be a never-ending, ever-obstructive, and disharmonious way of life. Some become conditioned to this situation over a long, habitual, and mainly unconscious livelihood, and thus accept it to be the normal course of things, without ever finding out the more easeful and wholesome way of life potentially there, while others are more impatient and troubled and consequently fight against it openly or not so openly, and thus go on in the seemingly interminable struggle on the strictly superficially empirical level of things. The middle path doctrine is the Buddhist ontological principle which avoids the two extremes, and at once resolves them in the way of taking on the dimension of inclusiveness or immanence of all things, including, of course, the perspective or viewpoint of the person concerned. Thus, the middle path is the, quote, vision of the real in its true form, close quote. Nothing is excluded, nothing is negated, nothing is abstracted. Everything is, in the sense of inclusive or immanent transcendence. The middle path, then, may be termed the ontological inclusiveness, excellence, purity, or supremeness of being. Nagarjuna captured and continued this fundamental message on the nature of man's highest state and gave his own systematic treatment of it by way of the Karika. He was the supreme Buddhist ontologist. He gave direction to man for his ontological quest in the mundane world. Though man is initially bound by defilements, ultimately he is capable of channeling his life to a richer, fuller, and purer realm. Understood in this sense, the Karika are nowheres unintelligible, confusing, misleading, or insignificant. They are indeed consistent, meaningful, and persuasive.